So we're live. Getting here was this weird symphony of chaos today. On today's episode, it's going to be a two-parter already because I'm running way behind. We're going to talk about focus and how focus can be the sticking point in your business, specifically my journey as a business owner with ADHD. And there's a story that actually ties into why this episode is going to be a little bit abbreviated. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll the intro and I'm diving right in. All right, so we're on episode 3 already. So we're chugging right along. Today's episode is going to be a two-parter, so you're going to see a wardrobe change in between these takes. But I wanted to I made the commitment to go through it, and this is part of me holding myself accountable to get stuff done. We're going to talk about how focus is harming your business growth. And I'll tell you my story, and I'll talk about focus in two different aspects. Focus from the aspect of task-driven to focus on opportunity driven. And those are two different lanes specifically. So that's what we're going to talk about on today's episode. My brief story today, there's going to be more of my stuff in here, but my story today is woke up and within the first 5 minutes of waking up, power went out. Apparently somewhere along the line, a tree fell on the power line, knocked down all the power from my neighborhood. So my office hours were shot. And I've been in chaos ever since. As ADHD, I'm a creature of habit. And I set habits and rituals so I can get things done during the time that I have pre-planned. And so when something takes away my ability to work, because a lot of the stuff I was doing was online, emails, website updates, and things along those lines, it drops me into kind of a chaotic headspace. And long story short, this is why I'm doing this on a different computer, because I left my computer I normally live stream on at home. Fortunately, I have a Chromebook with me, so that's what today is. But it's one of the small manifestations of my ADHD as a business owner. I am if my ritual is destroyed, specifically around getting work done, it makes it very hard for me to lock back in and get the work done. And I don't do well I can deal with shifting circumstances if I have to improvise, but if it's something I planned out and all of a sudden everything's upside down, it's hard for me to adjust. And it sounds weird, but in a group home, I was able to navigate that chaos because I was able to shift from one thing to another. Running a business, it's not always that. So we're going to talk about the two different lanes of focus that plague business owners, specifically those with ADHD. The first one, for me specifically, is that task focus. A lot of people misunderstand when we talk about ADHD. It's not that I have an inability to focus on things. A lot of times it's the inability to control what I focus on and the extent of how deep I focus on it. So if I'm working on editing a video in my living room, and I was just talking to a friend about this, if I'm working on editing a video in my living room and I see a squirrel run by the window, it's not that my mind goes, squirrel. It's, oh, there's a squirrel. I wonder if he has any siblings, where he's coming from. What tree is he around here? Oh, I need to get these trees cut down. Man, I need to figure out how much it's going to cost to get these trees cut down. Let's see. Let's look at arborists around here. And so it goes to 1,000 different places. And invariably, it always ends up at somewhere where it's not connected to what I'm working on. And not being able to go down that rabbit hole is actually painful for me. So drawing attention back actually drains the mental reserve. And I believe in my mind, in other people's mind, but in my mind specifically, imagine that there's a specific reserve for productive activities. And every time I have to refocus on it, I have to draw something from that reserve to get things done. So I can get things done. I work at my own speed. Sometimes if we're pressed on time, I can get it done pretty quickly. But it's a challenging thing and it leaves me exhausted. I've hyper-focused on, back in my days with case management stuff, I've hyper-focused on getting case notes done and things like that. 16 hours of just grueling straight through. And I was able to have reasonably legible court reports and stuff like that. And I had to just disassociate for a couple of days afterwards because my mind was completely fried. I don't even know how I made it home that day driving. And so it is one of those things where the focus part is a taxing thing. And so it is this ebb and flow. It isn't just a discipline thing. I know what I need to do and I understand what I need to do. And I have the capability of doing it in most circumstances, but my brain works against me in things that aren't necessarily that exciting. And from the task perspective, I have to organize. And I found I'm unmedicated now. There was a time when I was medicated and it was a little bit easier to do this kind of stuff with tasks, but it came at the expense of a personality. So I had to pick my poison with that one. But I was able to really get the task piece of it done by creating rituals around work and having specific times when I'm working, specific times when I'm not working, and having specific setups and things along those lines so I can get things done. And it's not a perfect system, and it looks like chaos to anybody that's not in my headspace, but it's what worked for me. And these are the simple tools. And I spent a lot of time and resources, specifically resources on organizational methods, the GTD method. I went out and bought all the folders, and every day had a specific folder that went along with it. And at the end of the month, you go through and see what tasks have not been done, and you do those tasks on the last day or two of the month. And it worked great until my brain stopped focusing on it. And then all it meant was I had 30 folders or 32 folders with varying degrees of tasks that needed to get done sitting in them. And so I've tried a lot of the different methods. I know there's the Pomodoro technique where you give yourself little micro breaks. So it's 20 minutes of work, 5 minutes of mental vacation, 20 minutes of work. And that worked until I wasn't able to focus on those. And so it's a lot of hybrid of different ways I keep myself organized. I write things down, then I log them on my phone, then I log them into Google Keep, and I try to back up information as much as possible so that I can find it no matter where I'm looking. And that's one of the things I've used. But from a business owner standpoint, there's a lot of different tasks that aren't engaging that you have to complete as a business owner, and that's a struggle. It's not easy, and it plays into the next part of the focus aspect. For me specifically is the bright, shiny objects syndrome. And that one is where I'm working and I get an idea. And instead of being able to just catalog that idea write it in a notebook or anything, my attention has to go to that idea and fleshing it all the way out. And I get bored easily with tasks that I know how to do already. And the way it breaks down for business owners, and this doesn't even have to have anything to do with ADHD, this is just business owners. We do bright, shiny objects a lot with business models. It's a challenge. We find new horizons and new opportunities and constantly are searching for new methodologies to get the new ways to do business and new activities that are exciting and thrilling for us. And that's the challenge. And it can weigh a business owner down because you're working on this thing that's really lucrative for you and that's working out great, but it's boring and you know how to do it. And it's not new and exciting and sexy like this new idea that you came in and go, oh yeah, I could really work on this thing and I could really learn it and flesh it all out. And I think it'd be a great opportunity for me. But then this other opportunity comes in and that looks great. And what happens is we start becoming consumers of new opportunities and business models. And then the ones that work, we just forget about them and leave them on the side of the road. And that's a big problem for business owners because when you control your own time and you control your own business, you control what direction your business actually goes in. Sorry, I bumped the microphone. But we control the direction the business actually goes in. And so when you have that level of control, it is really easy to say, ooh, that opportunity over there looks amazing. Looks like a great opportunity. And man, I love to learn more about that opportunity. Then you start learning more about the opportunity and you're like, I can really do this. And then you start the process of doing it. And then you realize, I don't know a damn thing about this. And now you have to invest time in learning more so that you can become proficient enough to execute on this opportunity that you've had. And all the while, the opportunity you're chasing is removing your mental resources and your physical resources away from the business model that's been working great for you. That's how it affects business owners. And so a lot of times it's being able to ignore that great looking, fantastic opportunity that has just availed itself to you and focus on the boring business that has been supporting you and that you know really well. That is how the focus thing cuts as a business owner. And then you throw ADHD into it, and then now I become a consumer of stuff on YouTube about business models and learning how these different things work and interact. And it's really exciting, and different methods of marketing and how this sales funnel works and all these other things and these tools and gadgets that can help me deliver content better and help me record better video. And there's so many different distractions out there. And then the distractions mix with opportunities. And then you start making other services based on that. And so the menu of services expands, and the more services you have with fewer people in still a 1 or 2 person operation, the more services you have, the more things you have to learn about how executing the back end of those services and how to market that to that specific audience for that service. And it ends up becoming this big snowball of possibilities and things that you can do. All the while, your business is sitting over there waving at you, looking at you like, hey, I'm the thing that's kept a roof over your head. Can we focus a little bit of attention on that? No, you're boring. Go sit down. I want this beautiful, new, sexy opportunity over here, and I can roll out all these services. That's where it hits you as a business owner. I know how to do a lot of things, and a lot of times it feels like a gift that I can write and I can shoot video, and I know how to set up a podcast, and I know how to do audio and lighting and all the other stuff for other people. And I know how to do a little bit of web design, and I know how to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I know how to do a little bit of e-commerce on Amazon and a little bit of e-commerce off Amazon, and know how to do some email marketing and stuff. And these skills are all great, but it makes it very difficult to establish, okay, these are the things I'm going to offer to the public, and these are the things I'm going to beta test and see how this service looks in the real world. And so what happens is I add new services on before I think about having the time or capability of doing X, Y, and Z. I never add on a service that I don't know how to do or execute. I never do that. What I will do is add on a service that I feel like I have a good affinity for, and then get into the weeds of delivering that service and realize I don't like this. But now I'm committed to it because I have a client that's paying me for the work. And so that's how this thing runs. The reality is a lot of times, specifically as business owners, if we would just pour into the boring stuff, we'd be a lot further along in our business. But it's hard to pour into the boring stuff because the boring stuff is boring. All right. So anyway, that's my intro for this whole thing. New opportunities are exciting. It's rewarding to find something new, specifically for a business owner, because you create your own little reality and your own workflow for stuff. Finding a new opportunity allows you to add a little bit of variety to your mundane day and do something a little bit different. But there's consequences for jumping from one opportunity to another, because you never fully flesh out all the benefits of that specific opportunity when you're constantly shifting business models and trying out different things. And then sometimes you get into a business model, realize you don't love it, and now you have to shift client bases. And even though your clients may not cross over what you want to do, sometimes they do. And that can leave some not great feelings, because clients feel like you abandoned them for something else that looked better. It's just not a good habit to build. And so there's a balance between finding those new opportunities and chasing them down the road. Now, ADHD, like I said, newness for creative people specifically, but for ADHDers, newness is a drug. It can be intoxicating. Learning new things, man, new stuff, it ends up becoming a thrill in and of itself. The thing I hoard is ebooks. My Audible account is it doesn't need to have as many books in it as it does. But I'm always finding new ebooks about things I want to learn. And I do consume them. And that gives me new interests and new capabilities. But at the same time, it's at the cost of being able to focus on the things I already know. And I am Mr. Start Ventures. I come up with ideas and I'm ready gung ho to start a brand new venture. And I still see the venture through, but sometimes you get knee deep in the venture and it's not as great as you thought it was. Not being able to focus can damage your long-term planning. And so this is probably the last part I'm going to go into, and then we're going to bookend it, and I'm going to come back hopefully tomorrow. I got to check and see what my availability is to wrap this thing up. But the lack of focus from a standpoint of planning, that lack of focus on any one thing, you never see any venture to its endpoint when you're not able to focus on the gory, boring details of what it takes to maximize this thing. And a lot of these businesses that end up thriving over the years are able to maximize one or two lanes, become experts in delivering those one or two things, and that's all they focus on. And then they just keep finding new opportunities to maximize the skills and capabilities they already have. They don't just keep adding new arms and legs and appendages to the things that they have already created. They focus on just maintaining it and then finding new opportunities. So their new opportunities come in the form of finding new markets and things along those lines to deliver the same services, and finding new ways to repackage the same services, or taking services you're already delivering them and optimizing them all the way out so they become industry level solutions. That's how they capture newness. It costs money to keep changing tasks and changing new ventures, because every new venture is going to require a specific marketing campaign for that new thing. You have to find a new audience for it. You might need new equipment for it. You might need to learn some other additional skills, classes, and things along those lines. So every new idea, new opportunity does have a cost, whether it's monetary resources, emotional resources, mental labor, things along those lines. So every new opportunity you add into your business makes it harder for the core business to function. And so you have to be very careful to only chase opportunities that augment your current business. And that's not always easy. It's easier said than done, because then you have to have a long conversation with yourself or maybe your business partners about, how does this new opportunity enhance the services we're already delivering for our clients and enhance the experience that we're delivering for our clients. And like I mentioned before, you can lose your trust or credibility with existing clients. And that negative talk can carry on, even if you're going into a completely different industry. That can carry from one thing to another. And specifically as an ADHD business owner, you end up, and I know it's not one size fits all, but there is a level of being sensitive to criticism. And a lot of ADHD people I know, when it comes to criticism, they're their own worst critics. But then you have a critical voice that never shuts up, and it goes constantly. It's like a radio drumbeat of negative things being said about you, and doing highlight reels or low light reels of things that you've failed at. And it can end up becoming a negative cycle for yourself. The goal is striking that balance and when to pursue new opportunities. And so I think, matter of fact, I think I'm going to dive a little bit more into this one, because I got a little bit of time before I got to go pick up the kids. So it's striking that balance between, is this opportunity something that's going to benefit me in the long run? Is it going to, what's the word for it? It's going to enhance my life, my personal life, the life I take home and share with my family? Or is it going to enhance my business and make me able to deliver higher quality services and give my clients a better experience? Those are the things you got to weigh. Or is it going to take me in a new direction and I'm going to be able to find new clients that can coexist with my old ones? And you got to balance about, okay, so how do I maintain my new client base without scaring off my old one? And these are considerations that you have to take. And for us, a lot of times when it comes to that level of planning, that piece is exhausting enough. So I have to think about all this other stuff before I do something, before I take an action. I have to actually sit down and think about it. What? Who wants to do that? Who wants to do that? Who has the energy to sit there and think about consequences before you make a serious financial commitment or serious emotional commitment to something? Who wants to do that? Not ADHD or shoot. I just want to be able to make the decisions, and it operates in a bubble And if the decision is bad, I pretend like it didn't happen. You got to understand this. That's the challenge. And it's being really real with yourself. And there's a level of accountability. See, these podcasts relate. The first one was accountability. This one is about focus. The last one was about ADHD, to bring it back. But what I'm saying is this. These podcasts relate because they're documenting my journey as a business owner and some of the things I have to struggle with on a day-to-day basis. You do need to sit down and look at your return on investment. Is the time, energy, and resources I'm committing to this venture returning in a way that's tangible or intangible for me? Either it makes me feel good about myself, it makes my family life happier, or it enhances my business, or it satisfies some other thing that you need in your life. That's what the return on investment is. So taking up painting, it may not be great for your business. It may not have anything to do with your business, but if it gives you peace to create something, then paint it. I like writing. And so I'm trying to find my way back to writing about frivolous stuff like comic books and comic book movies. And a lot of that got pulled out of me when my mom died. So it felt all pointless and frivolous. And I'm trying to return back to it because that was a happy place for me. It's being able to opine and write about that kind of stuff and podcast about it. So it may not bring me money, but it actually brings me a little bit of peace and happiness. And it's something I can look back on and say, I created that. So that's what you got to look at, a return on investment. And it's not just money. It's what does this thing return to me? And what does it make me feel more whole as a person? And then setting your boundaries with it. And for ADHDers, that's the hardest part, to not let this new interest take over your life. It ends up becoming, it's like, why people tell me I should be on Jeopardy, because I love trivia and I have a lot of it banging around in my brain, a bunch of useless knowledge that will never benefit myself or anybody unless I actually go on to Jeopardy. And if I went down that rabbit hole, what would happen is I would amass all this knowledge of trivia and still never follow through on the paperwork going to Jeopardy. So it's setting boundaries and being able to say no without feeling some residual guilt. Because that one is an everybody thing. Being able to plant your heels and say, no, I'm not going to do this. And not feeling like you're failing somebody or hurting somebody's feelings. I actually struggle with that one. I've been known to really bite off more than I can chew because I want to make somebody happy. I want to make their business better. I want to make their nonprofit thrive. I want to do X, Y, and Z. I want, but I also need to look at what I can and what I'm capable of and what I can do without sacrificing parts of myself to do it. And so that balance between setting that strong boundary and saying, no, I'm not going to do this is not an easy one. And it's one of those easier said than done kind of things. So let's see where we're at here. We're about 25 minutes in, and I have to go pick up children from school. And so I got about 5 more minutes on the live stream. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what we're going to talk about on the next couple of episodes, and then I'll probably backtrack a little bit and summarize and give you some stuff that I actually do. But the next part is going to be strategies and when to pursue new opportunities, and maybe have a framework on when the opportunity is a good one versus when the opportunity is a bad one. And sometimes you don't learn because the other podcast that ran away with my ADHD brain is now coming back to me. You don't learn that a new opportunity is a time trap until you actually get your hands dirty and start executing on that new opportunity. So being able to be at peace with yourself to say, okay, I've learned about this thing and I don't like it. And I'm trying to escape from doing it. And I want to put this thing down. Knowing when that new opportunity ends up becoming a time trap versus when it becomes something that's viable, and drawing the line and understanding when that is. And maybe go back to talk about how some things that business owners can focus on in the or in the near term to help them on a long-term trajectory. There's a lot of other things I would like to talk about. But if you have any comments or anything about focus or anything, feel free to drop them in the comments. And if there's something you want me to discuss on here, I absolutely will. It's a constant battle. And I'm not saying that ADHD struggles are exclusive to ADHDers, because a lot of these things is just a human condition. I get it. But we also need to give space for other people to express, that this is something that I actually have a very difficult time regulating in my mind. And that's probably a symptom of something that's wired a little bit differently up here. And that's okay. You learn to work within the confines of what you're able to do and give yourself peace for all the things that you're not able to do. Next couple of things we got coming up, I'm bringing on Les. He's coming back, one of my frequent guests. We're going to talk about some of the struggles that he's had marketing his business and some of the things that he's used to overcome marketing things as somebody who runs a creative-based business. We'll also be bringing back Rachel, and we're going to talk about having ADHD as a business owner. So that should be interesting to have that conversation. And I'm saving a lot of tape for that one. I'm saving a lot on the memory card because that one might go long, and it will be awesome. If you're a business owner out there and you have any unique marketing concerns, or you want to come on and talk about your marketing journey, you can shoot me an email. It's at mail@isellwords.net. There it is. So mail@isellwords.net. And we have a link to schedule podcasts. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and hit me up. All right, I got to get to getting. I appreciate y'all's time, and I'll see you tomorrow or Thursday to finish out this conversation. Peace. Okay, I don't want y'all to panic or anything, but I'm actually following through on a promise I made to myself. What? That is amazing, and it's something that rarely happens. But I'm here, and so the planets have aligned, and I am following through on something that I said I was going to do for myself. That's really dope. Welcome back to the second part of our live stream about being a business owner with ADHD. On today's episode, we're going to wrap up our talking points. I'm probably going to share a couple of insights that I've learned from managing multiple businesses with ADHD. I'm going to adjust this microphone so that you can pick up on my voice a little bit more clearly, and hopefully maybe even take some questions or whatnot, just asking what my perspective is on trying to manage this ADHD entrepreneur life. So that's what I have on today's episode. Hopefully you guys will get something that you can utilize from here. So I'm going to roll the intro, and then we are going to get into the meat of the podcast. All right. So again, I'm as shocked as you are. I'm actually holding myself accountable to do this thing that I said I was going to do for myself on Tuesday. I want to wrap up the conversation that we had and just talk about the impact of focus on being a business owner and how it intermingles with being an ADHDer. And I'll recap a little bit of what we talked about, and then we'll start breaking new ground here. So first thing I discussed was the bright and shiny object syndrome and how that plays for most business owners, but also is enhanced for people with ADHD. Talked about the danger of always chasing new opportunities and not really understanding how you have to allocate resources to really pursue any new opportunity to see if it's viable or not. And how always seeking new and how newness is narcotic, how that can impact your business because you take your eye off the ball and things that are actually making money for your business. We talked about seeking that stimulation and really getting sucked into the allure of learning something new or trying a new model or chasing a new market or chasing a new client avatar. And I talked about that it's not a lack of ability to focus, it's lack of ability to control what I focus on. Hyperfocus is a real thing and is a draining thing. And I can get phenomenal work done on a short time frame if I'm able to hyperfocus, but it's to the detriment of everything else that I have going on afterwards. And I talked about just some personal things regarding specifically hyperfocusing on learning about the function and form of recording equipment, camera equipment, specifically and having this huge knowledge database in my brain about how digital cameras and how mirrorless cameras worked and best standards for recording and posting stuff on social media. And at the time, I was using the learning to avoid implementing. And that goes into the learning trap we talked about on the last episode. And talked about constantly chasing new markets can damage your credibility with your current clients. What we're going to get into is talking about pursuing new ventures and when to determine when you do pursue a new venture, because at the end of the day, nobody's perfect, and I don't expect perfection from myself. That's something I'm trying to give myself peace with. But at the same time, sometimes it is beneficial to start seeking new avenues and finding new things that are adjacent to the business that you're running that can open up new doors for you. We're going to talk about monitoring that return on investment. And I talked a little bit about from the personal side of things, investing in activities that may not pay you money, but the investment you're getting returned on is peace and serenity and things that actually bring you joy in life, and setting those criteria. And then I'm going to talk about some of the things that I do specifically and some of my shortcomings. I'll be honest with you, some of the things I do struggle with, but I'm going to talk about some of the things that I do to try to keep my head above water as an entrepreneur with ADHD. First and foremost, it's not always a bad thing to go out and chase new ventures. It's not always a bad thing to say, I want to pursue this thing. It seems like it aligns with stuff I want to do and stuff I want to be involved in. I think one of the challenges is figuring out, okay, do I have the resources to do this? Yes. Okay. Do I have to divert resources from things that make my business run on a day-to-day basis? And is it going to impact my bottom line? The answer is no, then you probably can go forward. And as long as you draw barriers around it and make sure that it doesn't become a time sink or something that sucks in a bunch of money that you need for other operating things, it is okay to chase new markets. It's okay to test out new items. It's okay to try out new services. But understand that just like planting a seed doesn't necessarily mean that the plant's going to grow. You have to come back and take care for that seed. You have to come back and water the thing. You have to provide it with adequate care so that this new venture can actually grow. And what happens with ADHDers, and I'm guilty of it, I see a bright, new, shiny opportunity, and it's over there looking so good. And I'm like, I have the skills, I have the talent, I have the ability to do this, I have the resources to do this thing. I'm going all in on it. And then you start working on it and you realize that, wow, this is not as anywhere what I thought it was going to be. Because now I have actual experience to check. I have experience to check my preconceptions against. And now that I'm aligning the experience of doing the thing with the preconceptions I had about doing the thing, I made a mistake. And being able to have those real honest conversations about yourself, honest conversations about, okay, I bit off more than I can chew, I overstepped, and being able to step back off the ledge is a skill. Because sometimes, especially on the business owner world or even in the ADHD world, you beat yourself up for abandoned projects or things that you don't follow through on. But sometimes you do have a good reason for not following through on something because it was going to devour your time and resources and impact your ability to continue to provide the same quality of service that you wanted to provide before. And that's not a bad thing. So beating yourself up for not completely following through when you have tried out something and you're starting to realize this thing isn't really working the way I wanted to, or this is going to take a lot more time than I was anticipating, it's okay. And you shouldn't necessarily feel guilty about abandoning a project. It's worse to try out a new venture, realize you don't necessarily like that new venture, and then continue to dig yourself deeper and deeper in the hole. And now you are fully committed to this thing that you don't like. And I've actually made that mistake where I saw an opportunity and I thought it looked like a great opportunity. And then I got my hands in it and I had to stop and think, is this what I want to do for the next 10 to 15 years of my life? And instead of saying, okay, this might have been a mistake, I tried to even go further all in And fortunately, I had somebody to rebuff me because it was a kind of a partnership. And somebody to rebuff me and say, slow down, don't fully commit to this thing yet. You need to learn all the nuts and bolts of it and make a clear decision before you financially commit to this thing. And I thanked them for that because it gave me the clarity to realize, okay, this isn't where I want to go for the rest of my life. And I don't necessarily even want to spend another year doing this, let alone 10 or 15. And I was able to extract myself from it. But I had already committed a lot. I spent a lot of money and resources, to be honest with you, a lot of my personal money and resources on tools and things for this specific venture. I wish when the red flag started popping up early on, I should have just extracted myself from that. But you live and you learn. One of the things that is challenging is being able to say, I'm disconnecting from this thing without feeling like you failed somebody or let yourself down. So it is what it is. But understanding when to hit the eject button on a potential venture is important. Hitting the eject button on an opportunity is important. And sometimes it's great to say you want to pre-plan and look at all the opportunities and evaluate them and do the full SWOT analysis on it and make the best decision possible and all that other stuff. But you really don't know until you get your hands into it. And sometimes getting your hands into it shows you, oh, well, I don't like this at all. That actually happened with web design for me and I didn't learn until I took on a client for the depth. And it's not all web design. I don't want to silo myself off like that, but it's not all web design projects, but this specific one and layer of intricacy that were required that the client wanted because they wanted website services and copywriting services, but they didn't quite understand what copywriting services entailed. They didn't know that it's not enough just to design the website. You need words that go on the website. And when I said, okay, so what words do you want to use? They were like, oh, aren't you going to provide the words? No, I can, but that's not a service I'm getting paid for. And at the time, I didn't know enough to push back against it. And so I took on the website and copywriting thing. And I'm literally trying to create the verbiage for an entity that I wasn't involved with on a daily basis and put their history in and talk about what their different goals are and all kinds of other things. And one, I didn't really ask enough because of the time that was involved in it. And two, since I didn't have a lot of firsthand working knowledge, it was very difficult to write an about us page for an agency that you're not in. And since I wasn't really given any frameworks of stuff that I could use, it was even more troublesome. And so that aspect of the unified copywriting and web design was not my cup of tea. And I thought it was when I first started. I thought I would be able to just whip up something. And I realized pretty quick, if you don't get a framework, like if you're writing for somebody else and you don't necessarily get a framework of what they once said, and you don't have a good sense of what their voice is, you don't have enough referential material to determine what their voice sounds like, it's very hard to write in somebody else's voice without those things. And so I didn't know what questions to ask on the front end. And the reality is I dove headlong into the web design piece of it, and I fell out of love with that really quick, one project deep. And I had to decide, all right, so I know how to do a little bit of light web design. I can try to do stuff from scratch, or I can utilize website builders for some, utilize the speed of that at the sacrifice of the flexibility. I know how to do it, but I don't want to do this thing. And I was able to make a determination and pivot off of that. It was after I'd already had the client and I had to deliver something. And that's a hard thing because I probably, after the first couple of client meetings, I probably should have pumped the brakes and said, you know what, I'm probably not the agency for you for this because it looks like you want copywriting and website services. And I'm only here talking about website services. I can do the copywriting, but that's going to be a cost. And there's additional meetings that go into that. And so I'm taking those lessons now to really learn and fill out, okay, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do. This is what I want to focus on. And these are things that I know how to do, but I don't necessarily want to focus resources on. Okay. So setting the boundaries is the hardest part of that piece of it. And ADHDers and other neurodivergents, sometimes the boundary piece is not, it's not the strongest piece for us because it's hard for us to set boundaries for ourselves. It's definitely hard to enforce our boundaries because boundaries are really about what we are going to allow other people to do to or with us. It doesn't mean I'm controlling the other person. It's this is what I'm comfortable with in my presence and in reference to me. And so it's not always easy to set those clear boundaries with myself. And now I got to set them for somebody else. Ugh, that feels intrusive. It's easier just to say yes than to say, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. And that's the unfortunate part of it. That's my reality. It's easier for me to say, yeah, than it is to say, no, I'm uncomfortable with that. Or it's easier for me to say yes, finish my commitment, and then disappear and completely cut off contact with whatever I'm working with because I can't. It's harder for me to say no. I'm just being transparent with y'all. And that's what this podcast is about. So the boundaries piece is a piece that I'm constantly learning. And I'm not perfect with it, but I'd rather be transparent with y'all and say I haven't completely figured out this boundaries thing than say, this is how you set firm boundaries. I know what you're supposed to do, but my working experience with boundaries specifically regarding taking on projects and things that the business does isn't always the strongest. That's what it is. So strategies, what I do as a business owner to keep my head above water, specifically, generally as a business owner, and then as a business owner in that subcategory with ADHD. The thing I've learned, and this is something I've learned through maintaining and doing okay in a series of jobs that weren't the most engaging for my brain, is finding peace with what my workflow is. I've spent a lot of money on different organization strategies and different apps that are supposed to help out and different this and different that, different systems that other people have created that are that help people organize them. I'm not discounting any of these systems. I spent a lot of resources on the getting things done methodology. And then I got halfway through the book and got distracted with something else. I got halfway through reading the book about it and got distracted with something else. And I've learned over the years that specifically when you're dealing in any kind of neurodivergence, you have to find things that work for the way that your mind is set up and the way that you process information. And so sometimes it's taking bits and pieces of things that work and kind of slapping them together and creating a Frankenstein monster of a workflow that actually works for you. I've had other people try to design my workflow. I've had other people lay out what my priorities are supposed to be and how I'm supposed to interface with this knowledge and stuff. And I've not followed through on it because it wasn't something that was designed for the way that my mind processed information. And so my workflow is messy. The environment that I live in is a little bit cluttered. That's okay because that's how my brain processes things. Now, I do hold accountability for making sure that it doesn't get too cluttered and too overwhelming. And that's a constant battle. That's a yin and a yang that I have to fight. That piece between constant accountability and guilt. But at the end of the day, it's finding what works for you and building a routine around that, building a ritual around that. My daily routine, my wife will tell you that my daily routine is pretty consistent, even though my ADHD brain really fights against organization. I'm pretty consistent with what my routine is during the day. Specifically, on this day, I go to the gym in the morning and then come home, eat breakfast and try to get some work done, maybe knock out a recording or two. And then if I have to go pick up the kids, if it's my day, then that's what I do. And I come home, try to squeeze in a little bit more work before the evening activities start. And that's what my routine is. Anything that upsets that routine it tosses me into chaos. And it's hard to extract myself from the chaos. Like when I came in and did Tuesday's live stream, I was scattered to the winds because my morning work, my office hours during the morning were shot to pieces because we had a power outage. And I had a meeting scheduled that I had to reschedule. I had projects lined up that I was going to work on during that time. And I was not in the headspace to do anything. Power came on. I had 30 minutes to get out the door before my crosstown meeting. And when I came into the studio to record, I was not in a good headspace. And I went ahead and did the recording anyway because I needed to show y'all, even when things don't go well, I had to be able to show y'all and myself that I can persevere and adjust to it. And so that's what it was. Again, I'm out here unmedicated as ADHD. Now, I'm not saying either one is preferable because the medication helped a lot. Like I said, it just riled me in my personality. And I think a lot of times I was looking for results faster. I was looking for results to happen faster than the medication to do more than it was doing. And so I stepped away from the medication piece of it because it was destroying my personality and interpersonal relationships. And so I had to learn how to adjust to life with a super boring job that required an insane amount of detail and attention to detail without anything. And that was not fun because it was back on self-medicating with caffeine, self-medicating with long office hours, and a lot of other things that were coping strategies to get things done. So in all that, I learned that other people's practices don't work for me. I also learned that trying to focus so much time and energy on having an organized space was actually draining me and keeping me from doing the real work that mattered. And that I need to log things that I'm supposed to remember. I need to log those in multiple places. I need to put them in as many places as humanly possible. So I need to write it down. I need to say it into a voice recorder. I need to type it into an online checklist with cloud storage. I need to do something along those lines and have that level of redundancy so that I can remember that I need to do X, Y, and Z. The addition or the progression of like voice technology and stuff has been great. Voice assistants and stuff. I was testing out all these different voice assistants apps early on before the Siri and the Google stuff could put things on your calendar for you. I was testing out all of them because I was literally looking for something that as a thought popped in my head, I could tell my phone to put it on my calendar to do. And so I utilize all these tools. I utilize a lot of digital tools to really help keep me on track. And in the absence of those, I have a notebook. And in the absence of that, I have my phone where I can go to Google Keep and drop stuff in there if I need to remember it. That's how I do it. I don't try to streamline the way I store information. I have multiple copies of stuff. I may ask for a business card a couple of different times just so that I can have multiples on hand so that when I scan them, I have visual reminders to scan these things. That's what I do. It's not the most straightforward and it's not the cleanest way of getting things done, but it's what works for me. And I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough grace to do things the way that we need them done. We see a lot of people out here, especially in the influencer space and things like that. There are all kinds of people that will tell you how to organize your life down to the nanosecond. And you try out these things and you find yourself in a place of frustration or feeling like you're lacking something. I see it a lot in the minimalist YouTube world where, yeah, Chris, you got a pocket notebook. Yeah, I have to have all that stuff. Those are the tools I use to try to keep things running. Like more times than not, it gets dropped in my Google Keep, and that's how I find it. But what I was saying was there's a lot of things out there, a lot of implements, and I see it a lot in the minimalist YouTube space where they're like, you're a prisoner of these things and you got to get rid of all these things. And I don't necessarily believe in that. I understand the philosophy of freeing yourself from a lot of the material connections, but sometimes you have stuff for a reason. Sometimes you have things for a reason. You have things that you enjoy, and that is perfectly fine. It is fine to have things that bring you peace and you enjoy. My daughter, specifically, she will not leave the house without her drawing notebook and a pencil, because those are the things that make her happy. And those are the things that she does when she's in new environments and it's uncomfortable for her. That's where she finds her peace, and it is fine to have those things. I think a lot of times we get too wrapped up into this idea that the possessing connections to things is detrimental. And we get obsessed with organization and cleanliness and all this other stuff. And yes, cleanliness is important to have a clean environment, but I think it ends up becoming an obsession where we're worried about what other people are thinking. And I'm saying this as somebody who's guilty of that as anybody else. Just the real. So I'm saying all that to say this. I have to give myself peace to be me, and peace to do things that work for me, and peace to implement things that serve me without feeling guilty about how it looks to other people. And I say that as the ADHD Brian, but as the business owner Brian, I got to do that with the business too. I do that with two businesses. I manage two businesses. I set the stuff up to work for me. And so to expand it, I have to find other things that work for me as the business grows. So I do have to scale up and maybe change some of the orders of operations of things that I do. But I have to find things that work with my brain. And so that's why it's not fast to scale sometimes. I have to figure out things that workflows that work for me. When I started this podcast, I had to find a very specific workflow that makes life easier. And so I found my online tools that work. Opus, I'll drop some names. Opus Pro helps me record long form videos and chop them up into bite-sized Instagram reels and TikToks and all that other stuff. I know how to edit the videos by hand, but this makes that process a lot faster. $19 a month. I get 2 hours of videos I can upload, and I go nuts. Descript is amazing. It started out just as an audio editor, but they added in video features, and it allows me to edit my videos like I would edit a Word document. And I know Adobe has included those features in there in Premiere, and I do use those too. But it makes it really easy for me to remove all the ums, ahs, and all the other stuff in one click. I could just say remove filler words, and it does that. The editing tool is called Descript. It's an online web app that you end up downloading. I think it's Mac and PC. But basically what it does is when you drop a video in, it transcribes the whole video. The transcription isn't the best, but it does transcribe the whole video. And then you can just follow along and read the text. And then as you need to remove chunks and edit the video, you just delete pieces of the transcription piece and it removes it from the video and then edits it for you. So it stitches it back together. And it's pretty seamless. But that's a tool that I do run with. And it helps me out a lot. It can be a standalone video editor. I don't necessarily like it because it's not easy for me to do overlays and lower thirds and all that other stuff for more professional quality work. But it works to create an audio file or a video file that I can upload to a more complex video editor to do other things that I want to do with it. And then once I get the stuff where I want it to be on the script, I download the file and drop it into Opus Pro. And Opus Pro is a little AI thing, and it just chops up the video and transcribes it and reframes it so I can put it on all the different social media platforms. And if it's a long form video, then I got to go in and manually edit it and put lower thirds and all the other stuff. But that's the tool. And these are things that have benefited my workflow. I can take an entire, like for the short form videos, I can take an entire transcript of what I've said on a 1 minute or 30-second video, just copy and paste it over in the ChatGPT and tell it, hey, keep the same voice tone, make this into a summary or make this into something to go on YouTube, write it at a 7th grade level or 6th grade level. I can give it all those things and it can manipulate the words that I've already said and make them a little bit more coherent so I can put it as a summary or a video description or a caption. These are the different implements that I use. Yeah, you're welcome, Chris. Yeah, the script is amazing. The script can be, if you learn how to use it, it can be your one-stop video editing and audio editing solution. It has all of the tools. If you need a more precise kind of scalpel, like I do with some of the video editing and audio editing, that's where I use like Adobe. I'm trying to get better with DaVinci Resolve and stuff, but Adobe is the one I'm paying for right now. So that's what I use. But yeah, anyway, these are the tools that I use to be productive, and they're a blessing. They allow me to do a heck of a whole lot without spending inordinate amounts of time making my thoughts shareable. I hope that makes sense. My setup right now is pretty dead simple. And as it stands right now, it's going to sound like a lot, but from somebody who buys cameras and stuff, it's not a heck of a whole lot. And some of this you can even do with a smartphone. But my audio recorder is right now is probably like $150. The camera I'm using, you can get a newer version of it for $500, $600, and you have professional level streaming equipment. But you could also just drop your phone in here and do some of the same things. My lighting setup is cheap. I bought this little light you see right here. It can change color. It can match any light source that I'm using. I bought that for $99 online. So this stuff isn't necessarily expensive to get started. And to be quite honest with you, I'm getting off topic because of ADHD. But to be quite honest with you, to get started, if you just wanted to do an audio only podcast, you need like a $30 mic that could plug into your phone, and you need to find an area in your house that has stuff on the walls. A closet, a walk-in closet is an amazing place to do an audio-only podcast because the clothes absorb all the sound. You don't have much reverb and everything. And so the only sound you have to contend with is the stuff that's going directly into the mic. But yeah, those kind of tips, those are the kind of things that make my life easier. Simple fixes. I don't really hinge too much on the more complex things. I know as I scale the podcast up, it adds new wrinkles to it. And even when I bring in guests, it adds new wrinkles to it because I have to have a 2-camera setup and I have to have 2 microphones. And if I have Brandy, and I have to have 3 microphones. And so that adds layers of complexity. So I really try to simplify the workflow and the production side. I try to really streamline that and simplify it as much as I can. That's what I got. So the things I use are, and I know that I can't just say, yes, I use this specific method to keep things organized and work with my ADHD brain. I do this pre-prepared thing that you can go buy in a box somewhere. It doesn't work like that. I put together workflows that work for how my mind works. Period. If any of my former workers are watching, that's something I've told you. And it comes from experience. You create a workflow and a lifestyle that works for the way that you process information and the way that you actually get things done. You don't have to feel like you have to use anybody's filing system or anybody's organization method or whatnot. You customize it for what you need it to be. Because at the end of the day, if it matches the way you think and your workflow follows along the way that you process information and disseminate information, then it ends up becoming a no-brainer, ends up becoming a habit. And then the habit becomes ritual, and then it becomes something you do without thinking about. And anytime I can remove any intellectual overhead where I don't have to actually think about what I need to do next, that allows me to be as creative and as productive as I need to be. So yeah, I have my rituals and I have my things that I like and I have my tools that I use, and I find something that works and I ride it till the wheels fall off. I find a workflow that works and ride it till the wheels fall off. I find an organization method that works for me and I'll ride it till the wheels fall off. Now, am I prone to jump in and say, "Ooh, here's a new tool. Let me dive right in and see if I can use this"? Yes, I do. And if it works, I keep it. If not, then I forget it even exists. And that's how I run. From a business standpoint, I have it set up. I try to automate as much as I can. I finally had to bite the bullet and pay up for something that's going to take a lot off my plate with one of my businesses, and that's going to be a website overhaul and actually using a paid service that specializes in the industry that we're in so that we can streamline bill collection and communication with parents and athletes and all kinds of other stuff and merch and all the other stuff that we want to do. And I don't have to piece together a bunch of desperate elements to make the thing work. And yeah, we're moving forward with the paid version, a paid service that does a lot of the things that I've cobbled together and have been running with for the last 6 years. And it took me a long time to reach that point where I said, okay, this thing I built isn't doing what I needed to do. And so now I need to add a layer of complexity and bring another person in to manage this piece of it. And that's what we did. So you go with what works, y'all, at the end of the day. And I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough space to do that. That's what it is. If you guys ever want me just to do a workflow, just strictly workflow and showing how I produce this content, I'm down for it. My goal is, and that's what I Sell Words exists to do. We want to teach, the first layer is we do want to teach business owners how to get started making their own content, because you don't need all of this to make content. And all of this isn't really too terribly expensive compared to what I've seen people do or people spend on. I've seen influencers and stuff. I know MKBHD, he has an $80,000 camera that he utilizes. And he has $1 million studio and lights that cost $1,000 and stuff. My setup here is probably under $1,000, maybe right around $1,000. And that was at the time of purchase. All that stuff that I purchased has depreciated in value, so you can get it a lot cheaper, get a little bit over half of what I paid, and have a pretty decent little setup for yourself. You don't need all of this. And so what I want to do is teach business owners how to do this stuff. If you want a gear-centric one, I can do that. Now, back to the conversation of focus, because you guys got a chance to see exactly how my ADHD worked. And I let my brain wander on that one intentionally, because that's how my brain works. If I get on a topic, I stay on that topic until I remember that I was talking about something else, and I jump back to my original topic. Find a workflow that works for you. Don't beat yourself up. Don't hold yourself to these constraints that you see other people, influencers, or the type A personality in your office that has everything going, or the guy or the lady on YouTube that teaches you how to strip away all the worldly possessions and live with absolutely nothing. Don't feel beholden to compare yourself or compare your life or compare your business to those people. A lot of times when you see these really successful influencer business owners online, the thing they don't tell you is they have a big team of people underneath all of that, underpinning all of that, who remove the intellectual overhead for them. So they don't have to do a lot of the thinking. They can go ahead and create what they need to create or do what they need to do that makes their business run, and then they can pass it off to somebody else. And that person executes their job, and it's just one less thing for them to have to think about on a day-to-day basis. So don't beat yourself up if you're a 1 or 2 or 3 person operation and you don't have the level of intricacy that you see online, because a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. Put together the workflow and business model that works for you and stay with that. And then you do it till it doesn't work anymore. And then when it doesn't work, you don't throw the whole baby out with the bathwater. You come back and say, okay, what element of this is dropping the ball? What element of this thing is not working? And then you tweak that element a little bit, and you adjust and you add and you subtract to make that workflow work again. And then you stay with it until it stops working again. And that's the pattern of evolution. And like I said, it's not just an ADHD thing, but I'm throwing it out there for people that are struggling with this and want to be in the entrepreneur life, because I ended up having to leave the corporate world just because I realized that my brain does not go in a straight line. And that's all right. It's fine. I have to give myself peace with that. and to be at peace with the concept of I don't think or maneuver or act like everybody else in this environment, and that's fine. I like to work when I like to work, and when I don't want to work, I want to be able to disassociate and do things that may not be tied to work. And that doesn't always come on a 9 to 5 schedule. So I had to find an avenue where I didn't have to really be beholden to that. And I had to step away from it. Is that the avenue for everybody? No. You know, entrepreneurship and business ownership is not for everybody. So if it's not your lane and you are still struggling with ADHD, I would say my encouragement is to find what works for you and then do it. And then you do it till it don't work anymore. I hope that I wanted to give you more, but I don't want to be trite with it, but that's the way that I've seen it work. And that's the way that I have had success with different things that I try in my life is find the way it works best for me and then do it until it don't work no more. So anyway, that's the focus one. Like I said, I'm about to start wrapping up here. From the focus standpoint, one of the most important things as the business owner, specifically when you're dealing with ADHD, is this. You don't want to take on more than you can chew. You want to be able to evaluate opportunities. And sometimes you have to get your hands dirty in opportunity before you realize that it's not what you want to do. And then at that point, set the physical boundaries, the emotional boundary to say, this thing isn't what I thought it was. I am at peace with stepping away from it. And maybe finding a different avenue to implement it. Maybe I come back to it at a later point where I have more resources to allocate to it. And being cool with that. Don't feel like you have to go all in with something that isn't serving you from a business standpoint or an emotional standpoint. Evaluate an opportunity and say, does this align or augment with services that I'm already providing? If it does, then you might have hit a gold mine, and this might be something that may be beneficial for you to pursue as an opportunity. But if it's something that's really left field and something that requires a whole new set of skills or resources to get done, it may not be the best choice for you. Because if you're running one business and then you have an idea for another business model that you want to try, you have to make the conscious decision about what resources you're going to divert away from your existing business to go pursue this one. Or you're going to have to find a way to provide new resources to follow this new opportunity. And a lot of times when your business slows down, it's not finding something new, it's going in and figuring out what piece of my existing business is not working and then fixing that piece of it. And when you're able to do that, you may find new opportunities within the business model that you're working on. But going and trying to add new things, new bells and whistles to a business that isn't maximizing all aspects of its existing model is a way to just waste time and spin your wheels. I'm reminded of the specific venture I mentioned earlier where I thought I had a great idea and we're going to go into this new arm of doing things and new service that we can roll out. And then I started getting into the nuts and bolts of actually learning how to deliver the service. And one, it was something that I was not too terribly interested in. And two, it was something that was extraordinarily time consuming. When I say that extraordinarily, it was a lot of cleanup. It was a lot to implement it. It required a lot of resources to do. It required a lot of practice to get good at it to the point where we could sell it as something that we can provide to the public. There was a lot going on with it, and it just wasn't worth it. And the only way I learned that was by doing it because it looked great on paper. It's okay to want to pursue new things, but make sure that new thing isn't damaging the thing that you already have. Again, the analogy of the new dog when you already have a dog in the house. You can't just starve the old dog because the new dog comes in. You got to provide double the food and double the water to keep both animals alive and happy. And you got to do the same thing with your business. That's what I got. Focus is important. Sometimes staying focused is draining. And it is what it is. I really appreciate your time. Hopefully this was informative for you. Again, this is part 2 to the part 1 that I recorded. I'm going to mash these together and do it as one podcast episode. And this is not going to be the last time I discuss this. Again, what we have coming up is I'm going to bring back Les, and we're going to talk about the marketing sticking points that you run into when you have a creative business. His is web design and graphic design and things along those lines. And we're going to talk about how he's overcome some of the marketing challenges that he's faced. And then the one after that, we're going to be talking to Rachel. And we're going to actually have the full conversation about being a business owner with ADHD. So that's what we have coming up on the next couple of episodes. I really appreciate your time. If you're interested in consulting services, we offer a full suite of marketing services with I Sell Words. But if you want the consulting and coaching part, hit us up at mel@isellwords.net, and we can schedule a sticking points meeting to figure out where your business or marketing is stuck and maybe even come up with a solution to get you moving forward. And that's really what that service is about. We can also provide some done-for-you marketing services if you need them to help move you forward. And I put the email on the screen. Hit us up at mel@isellwords if you have a sticking point and want to get things moving forward. That's what I got. I do appreciate y'all's time and attention to this. Again, the live stream is going to get chopped up into a podcast, and you'll see that podcast on YouTube or wherever you enjoy your podcast. I'm working on getting on iTunes, y'all, with this new one. So you'll be seeing that there in the next couple of days. So that's what I got. I will talk to y'all later. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.